everyone, this is Erin Dougherty. Thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation on the resistance to 4-H helmet policies. The purpose of this sequential explanatory mixed methods study was to understand why some equestrians are resistant toward the requirement of helmets in the Colorado 4-H horse program. Specific individuals with a direct relationship to the 4-H horse program that were found to be opposed to the requirement of helmets were chosen to participate in this study. Through various types of quantitative and qualitative data analysis, results found various themes that answered this question and can be used to develop regulations in the future. So a little bit about my area of focus. A report from the study, a report by the Utah State University shows that throughout the past 20 years, there's been a large increase in states and counties requiring helmets while mounted in the 4-H horse program. This growth is tied directly to an increase in studies about equine-related head injuries. There's been hundreds of studies that have shown that the risk of severe equine-related head injury is drastically reduced by wearing a certified equestrian helmet. Because of these studies, as well as desire to keep children as safe as possible, counties throughout Colorado have or are attempting to enforce helmet policies. And as is common with most new policies, there's been a lot of resistance. There's a lot of different thoughts and feelings towards why people are resistant, but there's really very little data that clearly articulates why the equestrians are resistant towards the requirement of helmets in 4-H specifically. The effectiveness of helmets in preventing serious head injury has been very well established, and various studies have shown that most riders recognize the safety benefits associated with helmet use. For years now, counties throughout Colorado have struggled with this resistance within the 4-H horse program. Resistance from members and parents and leaders is actually one reason that some counties still do not require helmets in all riding events. So as I stated in my abstract, the purpose of this mixed method study is to determine why some equestrians are resistant towards a requirement of helmets. 4-H horse program leaders, volunteers, current members, and former members from several Colorado counties were surveyed. Those found to be opposed to the requirement of helmets were questioned further to answer the central question of why are some equestrians resistant to helmet use in the Colorado 4-H horse program. And then this central question was supported with the following sub-questions. What are the reasons people cite for their hesitation towards accepting a helmet policy, and what is their defense for these reasons? A little background and rationale is beginning in the early 90s, states across the U.S. began enforcing helmets when mounted on horseback. By 1994, 25 states required helmets at all times while mounted, 36 states required helmets in certain events, and 11 states had no requirements. The picture here shows you which ones had the requirements. Since 1994, more states have created regulations, helmet regulations, but Colorado is still one of those that has the most lenient policies. So in today's Colorado 4-H horse program, certified equestrian helmets are only state required in over fences and gymkhana classes. Individual counties can make their regulations more stringent if they see fit. So for example, Larimer County began requiring helmets in all events in 2004, while Boulder County, the neighboring county, still only requires them in over fences and gymkhana classes, which is just following the state policy. These new helmet policies have stirred up a lot of debate, like I've said, and there's different thoughts and feelings, but not much data that kind of articulates these. So through my study, I only really came up with 3 that kind of directly related to this topic. Only one of those specifically relates to the 4-H horse program, however. So as I've mentioned, the effectiveness of helmets in preventing serious head injury has been well established. A study by Abu Sidan showed that patients who had head involvement during a fall, only 5% of helmeted riders had brain injury, while 60% of unhelmeted riders had brain injury if they were to fall and hurt their head. So hundreds of studies like these can be found in various pediatric and medical journals dating back to the 50s that are proving the reduction of severe head injury. However, it's been found that only 20% of equestrians wear a helmet every time they ride, even with all of these studies proving that they could be safer if they were to wear a helmet. So one study, like I mentioned, is a 2004 Journal of Extension. It's titled, Why Should 4-H Horse and Pony Youth Wear Certified Equestrian Helmets? It surveyed a 2003 Indiana 4-H horsemanship camp, and it was trying to determine their feelings on helmets and their uses, like their patterns. So the results showed that only 49% of the youth surveyed believed that the helmet actually made them safer. However, the downfall with this is any further details of the study were not shared in the article, and countless searches on my part proved fruitless to finding anything else about this study. So a second study that I did find was completed by the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control in 1994, and it was outlined in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine. The results of the study showed that nearly 30% of the about 1,800 people surveyed did not own helmets. There were 900 English-style riders within this survey, and 57% said that they did wear helmets the last time they rode. And compare that to only 11% of the Western-style riders that wore a helmet last time they rode. Among 30% of the riders who did not own helmets at all, they mostly cited that they felt they were unnecessary or uncomfortable. And of about 1,200 helmet owners that were found to have helmets in this study, nearly 62% of them had one or more complaints about helmets, and 41% of these individuals did say that the helmet had prevented an injury the last time that they'd fallen. And the last study I found by the Harborview Injury Prevention and Research Center in 1993 was a written study that was conducted in 3 Washington counties. It sampled 837 people, 60% from urban areas and 40% from rural. The results of the study showed that only 20% of the riders wore helmets every time they rode, and 40% never wore a helmet at all, even though it does say that most riders recognize the safety benefits of helmets. Many riders perceived that they were not at risk because they were either experienced riders, had a quiet horse, rode on flat ground, or at a moderate pace. And then those that were found who did not wear helmets, the main reasons they gave was because they didn't consider it, they had not recognized the need, peer pressure, or it was uncomfortable. So these research studies, as well as some other non-accredited articles that I didn't mention here, kind of give you a clear picture as to why people choose not to wear helmets when they're mounting. However, that first study, the 2003 Indiana 4-H Horse Camp Survey, was really the only one that directly relates to 4-H. So because of these studies, it's fairly easy to understand why Colorado wants to enforce policies that say you should wear a helmet at all times. With these studies that prove the reduction of head injury, plus their desire to keep their youth as safe as possible, it's really clear to see why they choose to do so. However, the enforcement of the policy is still getting resistance. So the data gained from past research and this study will help to provide a better understanding of why these individuals resist wearing helmets, and then hopefully this data will assist the Colorado 4-H horse program in developing future requirements in regards to helmet use. So for my research methods, the participants for this study were chosen using opportunity sampling. The sample was selected using my knowledge and past experiences with 4-H. The participants were selected because they were available at the time of the study, they had experience with the 4-H horse program, they had a relationship with me, either a friend, acquaintance, in my network of group of horse riders, friends, etc., and they were willing to share their thoughts and opinions on helmet regulations. Participants included 4-H members, leaders, current and former members, and volunteers from Boulder, Larimer, Weld, Jefferson, and Adams County. And once participants had been selected, I used 2 methods of data collection, first a questionnaire, then followed by a one-on-one interview. So the questionnaire I used to gain kind of a little bit of demographic information about the person, an understanding of their background and experience with 4-H, and then if the participant was in support of or opposed to the requirement of helmets at all times in the 4-H horse program. I used SurveyMonkey to develop my survey and then emailed a link to all my participants. So after my participants completed their survey and they returned the results to me, I analyzed them using the steps of analyzing questionnaire data that was found in John Creswell's educational research. The results and the analysis of this kind of questionnaire allowed me to determine who I needed to talk to further. So those people who had said yes, they were opposed to the requirement of helmets, then I asked them to participate in the second method of data collection, which was the one-on-one interviews. So for my one-on-one interviews, I completed them by telephone. I asked a variety of kind of open-ended questions that related to helmet use in general and helmet use towards the 4-H horse program. And I really encouraged my participants to share their honest thoughts and feelings. Anything they had to say, I wanted to hear it. So I collected the responses using audio tape and then took notes while they were talking, and then I later transcribed the full interviews. I analyzed the interviews using the 6 steps described in John Creswell's educational research. And the themes that I found were used to answer my research questions, which were, again, what are the reasons people cite for their hesitation towards accepting a helmet policy, and what is their defense for these reasons? So for my results, the results of the questionnaire, like I said, it was a short questionnaire. The first question was just kind of asked about demographic information, their age, their name, their county of residence. The second question was, do you own, lease, or ride a horse? 100% said yes, which I knew that would be the case. I sent it out to people who did own horses. The third question asked, do you wear a helmet when riding? And you can see the results here in the first chart. 72% responded that they never wore a helmet when riding. 18% said they wore it sometimes, and only 9% said that they wore it always. Question 4 kind of went into detail more about what their relationship specifically was with 4-H. Question 5, have you ever been involved in the 4-H horse program specifically? So 4 and 5 were kind of related to 4-H and the horse program. And question 6 were asked if helmets were required in their county. 27% showed that the county required helmets in all mounted events. 54% said that their county required it in some events, and only 18% said they weren't sure. So question 7, which was the last question on my questionnaire, was really the most important question. It asked the respondents what their opinions were towards the requirement of helmets in all mounted events in the 4-H horse program. I was actually kind of surprised by the results. I assumed more people would be opposed. However, really, it only shows that 9% were strongly opposed and only 18% were opposed. What was surprising was that there was 45% people were neutral. I really had kind of thought that people were either opposed or in support of, and there wasn't as much neutral. And then also found that that only 27% were supportive. And what I kind of also found surprising was that even those people that wore helmets every time they rode were only supportive and not very supportive of the requirement. So the results of this question allowed me to kind of determine who I was going to contact further for the next phase. So those that I found to be strongly opposed, that 9%, and then the 18% that were opposed, I asked them to participate in some one-on-one interviews. So I interviewed 5 people, and these 5 people were those that chose that they were strongly opposed or opposed. They were a mix of former members, leaders, volunteers, and things like that. So some of the quotes can be seen here. Really, the general opinion was, for example, Hallie Harper, I'm opposed to requiring helmets in all mounted events because I think that they should be the rider's personal choice. You can see Joan Doherty said helmets are not stylish. Kaylee Loren says I only mount horses I feel confident on, and so on. So after getting the results of these, after transcribing the interviews, I analyzed each individually and looked for kind of common themes that aligned with my research questions, which again were what are the reasons people cite for their hesitation, what is their defense. I found 9 themes. The first theme I found was that people feel that they're confident in their riding abilities and they felt they could read a horse's movement or judge if the horse was going to do something silly and they could adjust as needed. And second, they felt helmets were not stylish or that they were ugly. When participants spoke about helmets not being stylish, it was mostly related to their riding attire, Western or English. Third, they felt wearing a helmet should be a person's personal choice. They didn't feel that it was responsibility of the 4-H horse program to tell them what to do. Fourth, they believed they were not traditional Western attire. Fifth, they believed their horse was trained well enough. Sixth, it doesn't actually make them safer. Some believed that really that any type of fall would just injure their arms or legs, not as much their head. And they also found that they were uncomfortable, embarrassing, and gave false impressions. False impressions being that maybe the rider was scared or the horse was not trained well enough. So in conclusion, these 9 themes that I found can be used to answer the central question. The reasons people gave showed me really clearly why people felt the way that they did. The results are similar to kind of those that I found in the other studies that we discussed earlier in the background and rationale section. It shows that 4-H members feel the same way as the general horse public. So with these results, I hope that the 4-H horse program can now have kind of a better understanding of why people are resistant toward wearing helmets, and then they will be able to use this information to develop future requirements in regards to helmets that address those concerns of those that are resistant and those that are in support. Understanding the thoughts of these resistant individuals should help them develop better policies in support of all of these opinions. They'll be able to make informed decisions on the steps to educating their members on the importance of helmet use and why they believe helmet policies should or should not be enforced. And it will really allow them to understand the reasons people cite and more appropriately address the resistance to the policies. Little author information here and my references. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and I look forward to your comments.